What's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of SSPN Live. I'm Jude. That's Ethan. And Ethan, the Spurs won last night. What universe are we living in?
Not reality, that's for damn
Yeah,
sure.
the dogs can't believe it either.
Oh my god! And of course, he chooses this time. It
As
was literally
soon as we come on.
so quiet until just now. Oh my god!
Oh my gosh! But he's happy about the Spurs winning. That's got to be why he's talking, right?
He is silver and black, so it would make sense that he'd be a Spurs fan. He looks like the Coyote too, a little raggedy.
Well, we'll just start off with that because obviously ending the 16-game road losing skid, me and you were DMing a little bit about it on Twitter. It was just nice to see Keldon kind of have a dominant game, leading the team, getting a dub. You guys saw it in the thumbnail. That was actually from the game last night. The cutout I used to Keldon in today's thumbnail, and there's a lot of pictures floating around from that game, and you could tell, in this 16 loss streak, I think, we get caught up, and obviously, this is improving the draft odds, and we're content with it in the context of this season, and we kind of look at it as a good thing. But you can really see the emotion from Keldon in that picture, and you can also see the emotion from him last night in the press conference and all that type of stuff. I mean, it looked like he was almost like close to tears in that win last night. So, just love to see that for the morale of the team. Obviously, as I was just saying, we don't want too many of them, but I think this one was much needed.
Yeah, it felt like it meant the world to him. I mean, you could tell in his body
Right.
language during the game, just screaming, trying to get all the momentum and doing everything he could to will us to a victory. 25 points without a single three-pointer to go in. Just a classic Keldon Johnson game. And then at the end, when we finally heard that the whistles blow and the horn sound, and we got the victory, he was like, oh, like you saw him almost like a deep breath, like finally we got
Yeah.
one. And Devin put his arm around him and pulled him in tight. Like, good job, buddy. You finally got that dub. So you're right. It's great to see for the camaraderie of the team and kind of the culture that we've kind of grown here. We want to win. It's clear these guys want to
You want to
win.
keep the morale up too. You don't want
Yeah,
everybody
for
just super
sure.
dejected all the time.
Especially coming up off the previous loss to Utah with the back to back. Like,
Right.
it was such an emotionally crushing defeat because we had it for three quarters and they just went on this incredible run. So it really felt like Keldon was like, all right, let's stop messing around. I'm going to go 100 miles an hour the entire game. Just get on my back. Let's get this dub and go home.
And another thing, I didn't even realize until we're just talking right now, Ethan, this was also the last game of the rodeo road trip. And
Needed it.
I'm sure that Pop challenged them like, hey, do you want to go like the entire month of February, like without a win? Or do you want
Hmm.
to, make a statement tonight or not even make a statement, but, prove something to yourself tonight and make sure
Hmm.
that you don't go, oh, and however many games are on the rodeo road trip, like 14 games or whatever. Um,
Yeah.
so that was another big thing too, to kind of they hadn't won a single game on the rodeo road trip, and last night was their last opportunity, on top of what you just said with getting another chance to kind of get back at the Jazz after the way that game went over the weekend. Love to see it. And also, of course, gotta give a shout out to Doug McDermott.
Oh, yeah.
Was the second leading scorer with 19 points, had 5 threes, 7 of 14 overall. And then also, I didn't watch this one live, but from the stats and from what I can look at in the highlights from what I saw, this seemed like one of Blake Wesley's better games, if,
For
if not his
sure.
best game as a Spur.
Best game since his initial game against Chicago, where he really came out, flaming hot. He kind of died down after that injury, but hello, Rain. Good to see you. Thanks for always being here. But 9 points, 6 rebounds, a couple of assists, and then 3 steals. He has the potential, Jude, to be like a free safety type defender. I don't think
I
he'll
like
ever
that.
be.
I
Yeah,
like that football term there. No, I see what you're saying.
yeah, he roams. I don't think he has the same potential to be like a lockdown one on one. I'm not letting you go anywhere. You're staying in front of me kind of defender, but he can roam in spots and kind of get easy steals in passing lanes. And
Yep.
like he has that ability and he's kind of lengthy and sneaky like
Right.
that. So he showed glimpses there.
Yeah, absolutely. When you were saying that, the first thing I was thinking about when you were talking about getting your hands in passing lanes, kind of being a pass deflector, like you said, like a
Hmm.
free safety, like in coverage almost. The first thing I was thinking about was his length,
Yeah.
and he's very wiry with his frame. So that play style, works with his physical attributes as well. So good stuff
Hmm.
there. Charles Bassey also had 10 boards, 7 points last night. Nothing crazy, but love to see him just being productive in the
3
minutes he
blocks.
gets. Right. That's another big one. And yeah, Sohan also had a pretty solid game. Not the greatest shooting night, but still found a way to score. Contributed with, had 13 and 6 rebounds, 6 assists. So it seems like he's getting some rhythm back as well. Obviously, Malachi didn't have his normal game, but also he was starting at point guard.
Mhm.
So I'm going to give him a little bit of a mulligan here.
He was also due for an off night.
Right, right. Yeah, with the way he's been playing. And we've seen a couple of those, but the main thing is that he's even throughout when we've seen those, he's bounced back the next game. So I'd expect, especially, we'll see what happens this Tuesday with the injury report. I'm not sure if Devin's going to be back, but I did see that Trey was actually there at the last game, still a DNP because of a sore foot. But
Mhm.
maybe if Trey gets back into the rotation, that can move Malachi back to the bench where he can be a little bit more comfortable and should be a little bit easier to score.
For sure. Or even maybe even stay in the starting lineup if Devin's
Right.
not back, and then move Kata back to the bench. Either way, I'd be
Right.
fine.
That's another great point too, because then he's playing the two. Because I
Mhm.
forget about that. We had Keldon at the two. Speaking of that, this is something that we haven't really touched on too much this season. But if you guys are longtime SSPN watchers, last year that we were just clamoring the entire season, like, can we not play Keldon at the four? How nice is it, even in the context of this season, that now Keldon is, what do you know? We played him at the two last night and he had
Mhm.
25, found a way to score, even though the 3-point shot wasn't working, and led us to a win.
We literally we spelled it out. Like he is physically able sometimes to play the 4.
Right.
But if you took what he's capable of playing the 4 and put him at the 2 or the 3, he could physically dominate his opponents and get
Hmm.
25 a night like he's been doing, and really showing out with all kinds of different ball skills that we didn't know he had. So they should really just continue to listen to us shoot. I think that's the key for the Spurs moving forward.
Well, I think Brian Wright's locked in right now.
I think he is.
He's one of the 8 watchers for sure.
For sure. And my buddy Michael, thank you. I'll bring the stash back for you, buddy.
Well, we'll see it at some time soon. For those of you guys that didn't know, the Ethan Stash saga started right before he went to Disney. So I forget what episode that was, but y'all go look in the SSPN Live archives and dig for it, find it.
We've been through a lot of different versions of Ethan. Like I had long hair and clean shaven. Then we went to short hair with full beard. Then we went. Then we went mustache for a little bit. Now we're back to short hair and clean shaven. So we'll
Yeah.
keep changing it up,
It's
keeping
the
it interesting.
trials. It's kind of
Yeah,
long hair, clean shaven Jude right now. But when I
yeah.
was back when I was grinding at the record in the fall, it was short hair, non-shaven Jude. So we'll
Mm,
see. The saga will only progress. But you know
yes.
what saga has also progressed, Ethan?
What's that, Jude?
That is the Spurs continuing to be one of the top 3 worst teams in the league with the top 3 draft odds to potentially land Victor Wembanyama, who is
Yes.
also in our thumbnail today. And because the Spurs actually got a win last night, originally we're going to do these prospect profiles as kind of like standalone videos that are pre-recorded. But because they actually got a dub, it was like, hey, we have something to talk about. So we figured we'd go live for it. But we're going to dive in and do a prospect profile on Victor Wembanyama right now. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of good in this one. When we get down to some of the nittier grittier guys, whether that's Cam Whitmore or a Sir Thompson, there might be more negatives that we talk about. So obviously, with him being, one of the NBA's generational prospects over the past 50 years. This is going to
Hmm.
be a very unique prospect profile with a lot of good. But we're going to break down the strengths and weaknesses on offense and defense, and then maybe just some other things that we noticed in the nooks and crannies of what he plays. So, or how he plays, or how whoever plays. So, Ethan, I'm going to give you the floor right now. We can go ahead and start on offense. This should be pretty easy. Uh,
Yeah.
what have you seen from Victor Wembanyama after doing a deep dive? We were sending some videos back and forth earlier.
Hmm.
There's so much content on him, thankfully. This past weekend, he played a couple games, was the leading scorer in both games in the FIBA World Cup qualifiers for France. Uh, what are your thoughts on Victor Wembanyama's offensive game?
I mean, he has everything in his bag, right? I mean, I know his shot can tend to be streaky occasionally, but when he's been on the biggest stages against the G League Ignite and on nationally televised games, he has continued to show out. He can handle the ball with the best of them at 7'3", 7'4". He's got Kevin Durant like handles. He can pull
Yep.
up from the mid range. He can post up, face up. He's got hook shots. He's got fadeaways. He can spot up from 3. He can shoot one-legged fadeaways from the corner. Like there's really very little as far as a whole in his
Right.
offensive game. The most glaring one would be his stature. A lot of people question whether or not he can handle the physicality. I know there was that big video that went viral of him getting put back down and dunked on by some random adult that
Yeah.
plays overseas. I don't even know his
Yeah.
name.
And then slipping a little bit with his leg, kind of looking like a
Hmm.
giraffe, right?
Yep, and that's just something that for now we're going to have to live with. Uh, I think of other guys that have had slender builds that have still managed to have successful careers. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar comes to mind. He
Mm-hmm.
wasn't as physically imposing coming
Yep.
out of UCLA. Dirk Nowitzki coming out of Germany, he was one of
Yep.
the same. Kevin Durant, most recently, Giannis Antetokounmpo,
That's the
and
big one. Go
and
ahead.
that's the one that he always brings up as someone that he
Exactly.
emulates, that he wants to get kind of work on getting that kind of strength. I don't envision him getting too much bigger, only because of his feet. They really worry about that, and that's something that I'm fine with him being slender at this point,
Mm-hmm.
especially since how the modern NBA is. If he gets bullied down low, he's probably getting fouled. Like they're going to call an offensive foul, especially since he's a big star. They're going to try and protect him as best they can. Physicality's really been regulated out of the league at this point. Maybe it'll come back. Who knows?
Right.
But he's so tall. Maybe he can overcome that. Kristaps Porzingis had that same worry, and he's kind of been fine. He's one of the best rim defenders, and he's not a strong dude really, as far as
Right.
like physicality go
Yep.
is concerned. Um, and then Chet Holmgren is the big comparison, most recent one, because they have very similar
Yep.
statures and sort of similar games. But I still think at this point, Wemby still has a better body than Chet, as
Yeah.
far as strength and actually being able to bang down low. Chet was very much perimeter. Wemby can be perimeter and he has those handles, but he can score at all three levels. So the sky's the limit. And if he
Yeah.
can somehow emulate any of the dudes that we just mentioned, I think he's a shoe in for being a future superstar.
Yeah, yeah. Obviously, I echo a lot of the stuff that you just said. Just talking a little bit about the physicality and the stature thing. Um, I understand why that's a concern for sure, and you've got to pick out something,
Mhm. Yeah.
especially with a guy like this. But the one thing that I guess people can think about is even if that does end up being a concern, because of his perimeter skills, like he's still going to be a super valuable player.
Oh
Because the
yeah.
thing is, it's like even if you double him on the perimeter, like that's going to leave somebody open, but sometimes he's still going to be able to shoot over everybody.
Oh
And when
yeah.
you talked about his one-legged threes, stuff like that, like his bag in the post or just even like, if he's at the elbow wherever, like is very deep. Like his bag in general is very deep, but it's deep
Hmm.
in the post, it's deep off the dribble. Just go watch his highlights. I wish I could, really describe it in words, but he's a three-level scorer. He can shoot from anywhere. He can adjust driving to the rim. That's the other thing I
Hmm.
noticed in those highlights. Like he can contort himself, the acrobat badge in
Hmm.
2K. Like
Yeah.
he's got that going to the rim. To have that at 7'4", it's just ridiculous. He's out of a video game. The one thing that Spurs fans can definitely hope for, y'all go check out the Ringers video. That the highlight is, I think, or not the highlight, the thumbnail is Wemby meets the world, and they talk about just kind of his journey throughout all the different teams he's played for. He started playing professionally when he was 16, or excuse me, when he was 15 in France. Then he played for Tony Parker's team, and then this year with Metropolitans 92. And another thing that I think people are a little bit like they talk about is streaky shooting. You mentioned that as well. I think that's going to be easier in the NBA.
For sure.
There's a lot of, and that may sound crazy because yes, the NBA is the NBA is simultaneously the most talented and hardest league in the world. It's also one of the easier leagues in the world to score in. And that's because of how you mentioned how physicality has kind of been left out of the game. And I think that's why when you watch the G League game against the Ignite, the two games they had there, he shot so well.
Hmm.
There's a video from Marcus Howard. He's in the G League right now. I forget. I want to say he played at Marquette. Historical program. Got guys like Jimmy Butler coming out of there. Did D Wade play at Marquette
Yeah.
too?
Yeah. He did.
Right, right. So exactly, a lot of stars have come out of Marquette. Um, but Marcus Howard, even though he's in the G League right now, he was ranking the leagues like on what's easiest to score in. This was like a YouTube short I saw like last week or something. And he was saying like the NBA was the easiest. He was like G League's number two, or he was saying they're the easiest to score in. He was ranking it hardest. That's
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So the point, the G League was he said the G League was actually harder to score in than the NBA, and then he said the Euro League, and then he said FIBA, which is what Wemby is playing in right now. And
Hmm.
he's had some pretty, and it's interesting when you look at that because they won their last game, and Wemby was their leading scorer against Lithuania, and he only had 15 points. So that's just kind of an example of what Marcus Howard is talking about there. So the thing about Wembanyama too that you got to remember is he's playing in a league that, yes, it may not be as talented as the NBA, but you can be much more physical. They just
Hmm.
play much stiffer defense. Like defense is more a part of the game
There's no
over
3-second calls.
right, exactly. And then on top of that, he's playing in FIBA now. So not only was he playing in the, I think it's called the, I forget what it is. It's all just NBL or NLB. I forget what it is, but if y'all go look at the Victor Wembanyama highlights, they'll show like the name of the French league. It's basically the National Basketball League. I think it's the LNB. That's what they use. But regardless, you're playing there, and then you're going to play in France, and then we'll see if he plays in the World Cup qualifiers, and we'll see if he plays for France again in the summer during the FIBA World Cup. And for those of you guys who don't know, the FIBA World Cup is basically FIFA, but just for
Hmm.
basketball. And that's happening this summer. The US, I don't know if they're going to go, but that's because like all their best players are playing in the NBA right now. But the point is that Wembanyama has been able to still be a scorer in different types of leagues with real tough defenses to play against that play more physical than the NBA. And he's playing against grown men. Once
Hmm.
again, one of that asterisk is it's not as much talent, but at the same, and there are more physical specimens that he'll see in the NBA that he won't see there. But that is kind of, I guess, something that is positive to keep in mind when you look at basically his only criticism. Does that make
Hmm.
sense?
It does. And my only counter argument to that criticism, because I understand that criticism, it's completely warranted. But
Right.
like I always think of Dirk Nowitzki because he was a 7-footer that had the same kind of touch and ability to score both around the
Mm-hmm.
rim and away from the basket, back to the basket, facing up. He could put the ball on the floor, whatever it is. It's a very similar type of offensive game. They just put him at power forward and brought in like a Tyson Chandler or a Samuel Dallenberg,
Right.
a real physical specimen that can help him on the other end and kind of be an enforcer and allow him to do what he does best. So I think that's kind of the route that we would maybe have to go should that become a
Perhaps.
problem. But then it also could just kind of figure itself out because
Right.
Rudy Gobert is another one. He came into the league and he was super skinny, rail thin, couldn't guard anybody. And now he's a what
Another
three
French
three
center.
time DPOY or something like that. And sure, he has his deficits, but as far as defense and being a physical specimen, that's not one of them.
One of the things I was reminded of today, just because you brought up Rudy Gobert, was that video from like 2 years ago where
When
they
they
were
played.
playing one on one and Vic was kind of cooking him at like
Hmm.
17.
Yep.
And another thing that I forgot to touch on earlier, where you were talking about Giannis, there's literally a video where Vic's doing an interview and he's saying, like, that is kind of like the next thing I want to do. I mean, I want to try to be as physical as him. Obviously, like you said, because of his feet, he can only add so much weight, to where it's safe, but he's still looking to add physicality. He's still
Oh yeah.
18. I mean, he's not fully grown into his body yet, and he's a unicorn.
Hmm.
He's 7'3", without shoes, 7'4" with shoes. They did confirm that. There was a report that came out that he was measured early in the year at 7'4" barefoot, but he himself said he's 7'3" barefoot. It doesn't really matter because when he puts the shoes on, he's going to be 7'4" anyway. But defensively, we can get into that. I mean, the main thing, I'll start off on this one, Ethan. The main thing that stood out to me, dude, he can close out from almost anywhere on the floor. It's
Yeah.
insane. Like he can be near the block and the dude can be on the 3-point line. And if he notices quick enough because of his 8-foot wingspan and giant hands, like he
Yeah.
can just like almost like dive over there. And he moves so well on the floor because of it's like he almost glides because
Hmm.
of his even, I don't know, this wouldn't be his wingspan, this would be like his leg span. But I
Hmm.
mean, it's just because he's such a ridiculous physical specimen. I mean, he can block shots from anywhere on the floor. That's
Yeah.
really all I have to say defensively. I mean, he's switchable. I mean, maybe there's times that he could get beat off the dribble by some smaller guys, but if he just trails them because of
Hmm.
his wingspan, he can. I mean, they're not really going to be able to take a shot. There were so many possessions I watched today, Ethan, in preparation for this episode, where teams would just pass off, pass off, pass off, and then eventually they have to go take a shot and challenge it, and then you just block them.
Mm-hmm.
But I did also see him get beat a couple times. I would say that there was one play that I watched in specifically the Lithuania highlights near the end of the game. It wasn't necessarily out of control, but still, or it wasn't necessarily out of reach, like the game wasn't. I mean, it kind of was, but it was still, you don't want to see him kind of making those lapses and clutch moments. And because we're going to talk so much good about him, I got to give him some criticism here. Somebody made him jump, and then they had a dish off pass to where it allowed for a wide open dunk. But, if he doesn't jump there, he's going to block it. That's something that's teachable. And then the other thing that I saw is he did get pickpocketed on offense one time on a steal. And I think he could have given it, granted, the game was kind of already done, but I felt like he could have given a little bit more effort on that and might have been able to get a swat like we're talking about. But those are like the only two criticisms I have of him that I've seen in like his entire highlight demo. And once again, this is in the FIBA World Cup qualifiers, which is a very high level of competition.
He has the opportunity because of his physical tools to be one of the greatest defenders that's ever lived, because he is athletic and agile enough to guard along the perimeter. And you mentioned it. He doesn't really have to come up all that far. He could basically
Right.
be at the free throw line and guard anybody on the perimeter because he's got that 8-foot wingspan. He has incredible closeout speed. He played goalie as a kid, so he has
Right.
great reactions. He can contest uh, on a snap. He can recover too. If you blow past him, you're not going to get an easy finish. Like, he can turn around on a dime and smack that ball against the back of the glass. Like, it's very difficult to get around a Victor Wembanyama, especially with that
Yeah.
8-foot wingspan. And he's a great rim protector. And I know the questions will continue to be, will he just get bullied by some of the bigger centers? And it's a possibility. I'm not going to lie. Joel Embiid, Jokic,
Right.
Giannis, those are guys that are probably for a little while going to have their way with him if they get the ball in the low block. That just
Yep.
is what it is. But there have been guys like Yao Ming, like Rick Smits, that have given Shaquille O'Neal, Hakeem Olajuwon, Tim Duncan issues in the low block because of their incredible length and incredible size. They weren't as physical as Shaq or Timmy or whatever, but they're able to overcome that because of the sheer length. So will he have that opportunity to kind of maybe put a little bit more weight on and be able to guard those guys? Possibly. There's so many things that are unknown because he could
Yeah.
be a Sean Bradley in the case where he just becomes the most dunked on dude in the history of the league. That's one route because Sean Bradley was 7'7". Everyone thought he was going to be the next great center.
Yeah.
Kristaps Porzingis has become a great rim protector. And I know he's light framed like Vic, but he's still one of the league's best rim protectors. Same with Rudy Gobert. So there's so many possibilities here, but just about physical tools, he has the opportunity to be just incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing I forgot while we were talking, you were mentioning Dirk, and there's some talk about him potentially playing the four, and especially whenever you talked about how if maybe they start out playing him at the five, and then the physicality doesn't work so well, do they feel like it'll be better to move him there? Like I said, we'll have to see how all of that plays out. But the point is, even if it's worst case scenario and you have to play him at the four, like Dirk, you were using that example. Guess who Victor Wembanyama is working with as his shooting coach? It's Dirk's old shooting cat. Well,
that guy. Yeah.
Not yet, Ethan.
Not yet.
We can't jinx
Sorry.
it. We can't jinx it.
Not yet.
You're going to make the Rockets have him. And then what are we going to do? Well, they'll just waste him. It's okay.
Yeah.
No. It'll don't worry. It actually won't be a big deal if the Rockets get him because we'll
just trade for Alperen Sengun and then we're right back in it.
No, they'll just suck like they did this year. They'll keep
exactly.
They'll extend Steven Silas to a 10-year deal and they'll waste all their talent. Anyways,
exactly.
No. But seriously, Victor Wembanyama is working with Dirk Nowitzki's old shooting coach. I don't know if that's like all of shooting or if that's just post-ups, but I know that Kevin Durant also worked with him, for those fadeaways, and you can see the similarities in Dirk and KD's fadeaways if you put those next to each other while they're happening. The point is like you have all these skills and then you're working with like Dirk's shooting coach. Like, this is just ridiculous.
he keeps working, which is the most impressive thing to
Yeah,
me. Like, he's already being treated, and his camp is already, like, considering him as if he's, like, been in the league for 5 years and is,
right.
like, an all-star, and he's only 18, like
It's crazy.
Mhm.
But it's wild because he has been playing professional basketball
Yeah,
for 3 years. So just nuts. But I mean, like, if he even has to play the four, it's like it's the best case scenario for that situation when
yeah,
you consider his skill set and who he's working with. It would be different if we didn't have examples from the past, but like
yeah.
we do, you
Well,
know?
Kristaps played the 4 initially, and now he
Right,
plays the center. He put a little bit more physicality on, a little more weight, and now he plays the center. So, I
right.
wouldn't mind either way. It's whatever Pop thinks is best. The reason I just assumed center is because he is 7'3",
No,
and we have
absolutely.
Sohan, and I think him
Right.
next to Sohan would be so dirty, personally, but
That would be a mean front court for sure.
Oh, yes.
Any front court with Victor Wembanyama is probably going to be mean, but you know, as Spurs fan, we love that sentiment for sure.
Mhm, mhm.
Any any final thoughts on Victor Wembanyama here, Ethan?
If he turns out to be a bust, it will be the biggest bust probably in NBA history.
Would you feel bad, like if say he does end up turning out to be a bust? Would you feel bad about the pick? Would you be like, man, we should have
Mm-mm.
saw it? Yeah, I
No.
wouldn't either. That's the thing. Yeah.
This isn't like an Andre Bargnani from
Yeah.
2006.
Or
This is
Anthony Bennett. Yeah.
yeah, this is about as sure of a thing as since LeBron James, maybe Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis had a lot of hype too.
Right.
But
Zion.
LeBron, Zion, like the hype is real, and this guy's being picked apart by the best basketball minds in the world, desperately looking for a flaw, right? And there's still the only one they continue to harp back on is will his size be an extreme legitimate issue? And
And it's like
remains
with
to be
that,
seen.
even as we've been talking about, it's just like, well, then just play him on the perimeter because he's got the
Yeah,
skill set to do that if he gets bullied. And then
for
you've
real.
just got a 7-4. Like, even if it gets really bad and you can't even play him at the four,
Put him at the three.
you've got a ridiculous, like,
Yeah.
like you've just got a specimen regardless. So, hopefully all things work out. I really think that, like, I feel like even though him and Zion are very different, like physically, when it comes to just having, potentially being injury riddled, I think that's like the worst case scenario
Yeah, for
for
sure.
Victor is if it's similar to Zion where he just can't stay on the court, but he is, a special talent.
hmm For sure. Or
I
even
really
Embiid, who didn't
right.
play for like 3 years.
That's another thing that we forget about, Ethan.
hmm
And now it's like, sometimes if you stick the course with that stuff, even though it doesn't feel like it's going to work out. I mean, look, this is very small sample size, but James Wiseman just had a pretty good game in Detroit, like 23-7. That's more than he ever did in Golden State. I'm not saying that James Wiseman is the next Joel Embiid, but what I'm saying is sometimes, you just got to have patience for those things to work out.
Absolutely.
Alrighty, y'all. Well, we appreciate you guys hanging out with us tonight. I did see Abdi's comment here, so we can go ahead and end with this, Ethan. Obviously, today's episode was about snapping the losing streak and Victor Wembanyama's prospect profile. But what have you thought of Blake Wesley's season so far? I know we've talked about this a little bit, but just to answer Abdi's comment.
Started out super strong. I felt really popped when he first got some minutes, got injured, really kind of set him back a little bit apart from his two counterpart rookies. But he's been slowly getting more and more comfortable, showing us why he was picked at 20, right? Was he 20?
25.
25?
Malachi's 20. Yeah.
That's right. Malachi was 20. I always get them flip flopped. But he has
It's
playmaking potential. He has some potential of being a really good finisher, streaky shooter, free safety defender. I think just need to give him a little bit more time than we've given Malachi and Jeremy because of that injury setback.
Yeah, I completely echo everything Ethan just said. Just to kind of add on to it a little bit, I think we've just got to look at him in the same vein that we looked at Keldon his first year when he was mainly in the G League, DeJounte, Derek. We just kind of got to look at him more in that realm, as opposed to Malachi and Jeremy, who on big boards were both lottery players coming in.
Mhm. Well put. Yeah.
Alrighty, y'all. Well, thanks for hanging out with us. We won't have any post games over the weekend. Ethan's got wisdom teeth. Oh my gosh, man! I remember when I got my wisdom teeth taken out. So, but we'll be putting some clips out. There will be some prospect profiles. Be on the lookout for it. It'll probably be more next week around when we start putting out that content again. But thanks for hanging out with us today. Go Spurs, go! We appreciate y'all, and we finally got a win. Happy, gotta love it. Gotta love it for Keldon and the guys.